Welcome to Second Monitor Content. I am Eric. You are Ruyen.
Yes.
Can you guess what we're doing?
I mean, this is obviously a Pokemon tier list. Is this a fucking ROM hack tier list?
No.
No.
This is, we're going to rank all the Kanto Pokemon
Yes.
by their potential world building implications
Ah.
and what one would have to do to fit them into a more serious Pokemon world. Like if you
Okay.
were world building Pokemon like Western fantasy, what would
Mm.
you have to consider?
Yes.
We're gonna need Bulbapedia up because I'm not a big lore guy.
Yeah.
So like not 100% certain on what a lot of these will take. Right away we're not going to need evolutions. I'm going to inconsistently dump evolutions based on just which one I like the most from each line.
Okay, cool.
But I'm going to just immediately start by saying like all three starters,
Major implications.
major implications, only because why, like, you immediately have to answer the question, what makes them rare
Yeah.
and why are they here? Like, assuming that you're creating a fictional Pokemon world that still functions. God, they fucking love Charizard. Like, assuming you're creating a fictional Pokemon world that keeps all of the core gameplay of Pokemon,
Yeah.
like, what do you have to do with it? A lot, you know? And the starter Pokemon are definitely a big part of that because, like, there's only one of each of them, or at least there should be. You also have to wonder with them, like, what makes a good starter Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is, if Professor Oak here in Kanto is supposed to be a person who can, like, reliably get you going on your Pokemon adventure,
Yeah.
what makes fucking Bulbasaur and Charmander and Squirtle like good recommendations for 10-year-olds,
Yeah.
right?
What makes them starter Pokemon?
Like the anime kind of touches on this by like suggesting that he hands out a shit ton of Pokemon
Yeah.
and also just suggest like he's at least a little bit reckless because there is the point where he's like, oh yeah, and also there's this fucking battered, beaten down Pikachu. Why don't you just roll with that shit?
Yeah.
You know? But I think they have major implications for that reason. There's also just like Bulbasaur can fucking like put entire cities to sleep
The
in
fuck?
like enough numbers. Yeah. Mm.
I mean, like, I'd assume, like, Charmander. I don't get why Charmander's a starter, because, like, I'm pretty sure that little fucking lizard causes forest fires.
Yeah, and in the
Like,
games, Professor
yo.
Oak like straight up tells you he's like, oh, like this is hard, like this is the hard one. The other ones are easy.
Yeah, I remember there's an old video that I watched that was talking about like oh yeah, the different starters are basically just like the difficulty setting that you want for the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. At least for the early game.
Yeah.
Charmander also, like, lore reasons, like, if the flame on its tail goes out, it dies.
Exactly.
So it's like
Just like
you can't like get caught out in the rain.
yeah. Yo, imagine how many fucking like 10-year-olds in like Pokemon World have just like killed like Charmanders.
Oh,
Like,
the
no wonder they're so
storytelling
fucking rare.
implications.
Yeah.
Anytime something has a built-in kill trigger,
Yeah.
like something fucked up is happening.
Like, if people already don't understand how to take care of pets in the real world, like
This is the first place I have to like dig into the lore a little bit. Because like Caterpie could have some shit going on,
yeah.
but I'm not 100%.
I feel like Caterpie is important because like we have to assume that butterflies don't exist,
right.
and like Caterpie is like the replacement. So like bugs are important to the ecosystem.
Caterpie is an insect Pokemon that resembles a green caterpillar with a yellow. The fact that we can click caterpillar. Tell me, oh, see, it's
It just goes to the Wikipedia
Yeah,
page.
see, that's not fucking Pokemon lore, Bulbapedia. A yellow ring shape. Caterpie is easy to capture and grows quickly, making it ideal for new trainers, which is what you would think a starter Pokemon should be.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say we bump Caterpie like Caterpie probably also has major world building implications for the reason of like
There are no bugs that aren't Pokemon.
yeah,
Like,
and it's just our example of that,
yeah.
of the idea that like okay, these things are a little fucky.
Now that we're already on this line of thinking, do you want to like skip to Weevil and like the Wasp Pokemon?
I don't them
Is Weevil not a fucking Gen 1 Pokemon?
no.
That's crazy.
I think you're talking about Weedle
Maybe.
because Weavile is the closest thing I can think of, which is like an ice cat
I
figure
might
skater
be thinking
bad
about
guy.
like Weedle then.
Probably because Weedle
Yeah.
becomes oh, you're thinking of Venomoth.
Yeah, like that.
And fucking
what is the bee Pokemon?
what is its fucking Jesus Christ?
Is
I'm
it
being
Beedrill?
a bad '90s kid right now. What the fuck is
See, look, I'm allowed to not know.
what is Venomoth's pre-evolution?
That's a good question.
Oh, Venonat. Jesus Christ. I kept
Yeah.
wanting to say Tangela, which is anyway. Metapod I think is just good milieu. It's like it's just chilling there.
Yeah.
Butterfree I think also Butterfree is definitely interesting. It's like it's got its spore shit going on. Anything else from them?
No, apparently Beedrill is Weedle is the Pokemon
Yeah.
I'm thinking about because
Yeah.
it evolves into Beedrill. So you got to think about like imagine like a bee infestation.
I'm gonna say Weedle is interesting for that reason, right? Like
Yeah.
only in comparison with Caterpie. But Beedrill is definitely like has major implications because it's the first of these Pokemon that like Beedrill is not explicit like non-legendary Pokemon are never really painted as like explicitly
Like hostile.
evil. Yeah. But Beedrill is a bee
Yeah.
that also happens to have fucking drills for
arms.
hands.
Yeah,
like that shit affects a world.
Imagine
you know?
how expensive honey must be if
Yeah.
the only way you can get honey is like trying to go through a fucking Beedrill nest.
The Pidgey line and the Rattata line, I'm gonna say, are both like good atmosphere.
Yeah, it's like
Neither of them have crazy lore going on. Spearow can get the same treatment.
definitely a lot of rap bars
Yeah,
about
and
like
it's just-
Rattata's, Pidgeys,
yeah,
like Ekans and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Ekans. I wonder, like, Ekans and Arbok. I need to know if they have cool Pokédex entries or anything. But in
Yeah.
general, they're probably just thrown in kind of the same line of like, yeah. So it's just these are all kind of existing in the tier of just like, you have these around to sell the concept that animals are different here.
yeah.
I
I feel like Ekans kind of has kind of serious implications because like Arbok is literally an entirely like in the real world is an entirely different type of snake.
yeah.
You
So
know what I'm saying?
you're demonstrating with the Ekans to Arbok move, like you are demonstrating the weird biology at work here.
Yeah, that is true.
I would be more willing to bump them up if I wasn't a Pokemon nerd who knew that like other shit that we're going to encounter is
It's
about
just
to get a
even
lot
fucking
fucking
weirder,
weirder. Yeah. Pikachu, like being the mascot of the series, I like want to be like, oh, Pikachu has really cool shit going on. He like really doesn't though.
Kind
Like
of, yeah.
I,
He's like,
in terms of what we're following here, like Pikachu is the first non-starter elemental Pokemon,
yeah,
which definitely makes him interesting, but like other shit is going to have a lot more to do with that than
weird
Pikachu
shit,
is.
Yeah,
He really is kind of the epitome of good atmosphere where it's like Pikachu is just an example of a Pokemon. And now my lack of lore knowledge is like defeating me. I feel confident that Sandshrew and Sandslash do actually have some like
serious implications.
yeah. Um I could be really wrong though. It's more like the potential use cases for them. Burrows
Yeah.
deep underground and in locations far away from water. It only emerges to hunt for food. Its body is dry. When it gets cold at night, its hide is said to become coated with a fine dew. When hunting, it hides at the lip of its burrow. If prey comes close, it lunges out and drags in the prey instantly. If it fell from a great height, this Pokemon could save itself by rolling into a ball and bouncing. It prefers dry, sandy places. So Sandshrew has a lot of cool stuff going on. I would argue it's Sandslash where
Where it's like things would get. Yeah, any Pokemon that seems like weaponized in some way, right?
yeah. Sandslash definitely like the weaponization is there, but also um I'm pretty sure I could be wrong about this, but like in some Pokemon media it's shown to be like working with people quotation
Mm.
marks for
Yeah.
animal slavery,
Yeah.
like burrowing holes and mining.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that definitely makes it interesting. It's skilled at slashing enemies with its claws. If broken, they start to grow back in a day. Sandslash, the Wolverine Pokemon, it circumcises itself every morning.
There's got to be there's got to be like a whole like industrialized farm of people just like breaking and regrowing Sandslash claws.
Oh, for sure.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
No, they're
Like,
making necklaces out of that shit.
dead ass, yeah.
Red accidentally caught a Nidoqueen. Giovanni has a Nidoqueen. She's almost defeated. Are these ever shown to do anything like interesting? Its hard scales provide strong protection. Super hard. So both of the Nido lines we can just like kind of consider as one.
Yeah.
These are our first stone evolution, which definitely is interesting a little bit. It's really interesting fun fact that I assume everyone knows, but you might not. Did you know that the Nidos can't breed?
Then why are they separate genders?
Because they were like put into the game before gender was like a code
Oh.
for the Pokemon.
Oh.
Yeah. Um because the Pokemon gender isn't a thing until generation 2.
Hmm.
So it's just they fucked up something, and they the Nidos can't interbreed. Like you can't breed a Nido King and a Nido Queen. Very fun.
Very interesting.
We're talking about the destructive power of its tail. One swing of its mighty tail can snap a telephone pole as if it were a matchstick.
Oh god.
They really like that line. They use it for all of the DS games. So these things, they're just walking around like being destructive. Probably also good atmosphere, but just nothing crazy interesting. The Clefairy line. Ba da 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 da. Clefairy and Clefable are where we probably start to get into like shit that you would have to note.
Hmm.
Because they're from the moon,
What?
right? Clefairy is very shy and rarely shows itself. On the rare occasions it does come down from its mountain home, it can be seen dancing under the light of a full moon. The area surrounding their dance is enveloped in a magnetic field. Once the sun starts to rise, it returns home where it sleeps nestled with other Clefairy. The anime has shown that Clefairy is actually an extraterrestrial Pokemon.
Hmm.
Its magical and cute appeal has many admirers. It's rare and only found in certain areas. Da, 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 da. And then later on, we're going to get like Diamond and Pearl. The thought to live with others on quiet mountains is like the first real suggestion of that in the games. I kind of like the idea that Clefairy and Clefable are from the moon, and that definitely, at the very least, it has major implications. I'm arguing that that's our first really like important.
One where it's,
The
we gotta
second-
think about like where did the Pokemon come from?
Yeah, the second you have shit from the moon,
Yeah,
you have to start to justify, like, why is this from the moon?
Yeah, like
How did it
you
get
have to
from the
start thinking
moon
about-
to, like, to land? How did
Yeah.
that happen? Why does it live in mountains now? Also, the Nido thing of, like, it's a stone evolution. What does a stone evolution mean? What the fuck are the stones? You know? The Vulpix line, I think that they are going to get major implications because of their ties to, like, Japanese myth. But we'll see about that one. I guess I don't remember enough of the lore.
Vulpix.
Yeah.
Vulpix is definitely tied to Japanese myth because one of the big ones is like spirit of a nine-tailed fox. Is like a really big
Yeah.
like thing that always comes up.
I just don't remember if they're like if they do notable things within like established Pokemon lore. But then in this theoretical project, like how much do we have to worry about that?
Yeah.
A lot of Pokemon like have some sort of myth surrounding them, right? That's pre-established, but some of them also should. Yeah, it can understand human speech. So this one is like Ninetales. We're getting into some real deep shit where like this is now
It's like
spiritually tied into things. Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff, we don't have to go super far into shit for that to know, like, Jigglypuff is a meme in the fucking anime for its ability to, like, sing people to sleep. It's also just an exploited Pokemon, right? Like, they use it for show business and shit.
That's so fucked up.
That has some implications to it.
Yeah. Are like people making like Jigglypuff pop music and then like stiffing the Jigglypuff on the couch?
Yes,
Like what
yeah.
the fuck? Yeah.
Golbat is a large blue cat. Small eyes. I'm throwing this one in another, like, I think we're gonna get the same out of Oddish and Gloom and Vileplume, where these are all. This is that kind of mid-range of Pokemon of just like they're cool animal type things. Paris and Parasect are probably our next big leap into, like, Parasect is a fucking zombie. That definitely means something. Like, you have a fucking undead parasite walking around. Venonat, I know fuck all about. Let's see. Do you have anything cool going on? I mean, yeah, still just feels animal-y. Diglett is the first one that's not, like, really a person or really an animal. That has implications to it. Get dug under. You go there. The Meowths. Meowth has a potential talking cat. Has some fucking major implications.
But like that's the one Meowth.
Yeah. But even just like the potential for that to be a thing.
Yeah.
Even if you're dumping that lore, it's still an interesting thing. It's also like Meowths create money. Like the coin on their head.
Oh, like generates.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
So there's some shit to that. Psyduck and Golduck. Golduck can control the weather. So
Serious implications.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got some shit going on there. Primate. That's a man. He's a man, is what that is. That has some implications to it. Arcanine, the legendary Pokemon. I don't remember what the fucking legend is. Arcanine is a quadrupedal canine Pokemon with an orange palette. Da, da, da. It's fiercely brave and loyal. It's capable of running really fast with speed and grace reminiscent of flight. Extreme speed was a signature move. It's been admired for its beauty and speed. Arcanine is rarely found in the wild, but when found, da, da, da. So it is still just kind of like Arcanine probably has major implications just because you have to justify calling it the legendary Pokemon, but you can't really worry about that. The Poliwhirl line, at this point, they're just like kind of chilling. The Abra line definitely has some weird shit going on.
I mean, they do mind control, bro. Like,
Yeah, and like they're our first psychic type, and psychic types always are doing weird shit.
and also, isn't the average intelligence of like an abracadabra like 300 or some shit?
Yeah,
Like, aren't they ridiculously smart?
it's the overflow of its psychic powers can cause headaches to those nearby. So I don't think this line has crazy huge implications, but it's fucking up there with like everything else we've talked about. The Machamp line again, that is a fucking man. That is a human man. That has some shit going on. The Victory Bell line, that one we're throwing in Milu. Tentacruel probably has major implications. That is Cthulhu. That is a Lovecraftian monster, actually, is what's going on there. These were the ones I thought of when I thought of the Milieu title, because I can't imagine. Although now that I'm thinking about it, like Geodude is just a fucking rock with arms,
Yeah.
which is like actually does have some fucking meaning to it.
It's like Geodude a common like mining hazard,
Gotta be, right?
right? Like
When you break a rock in the game, it has like a 30% chance of being one.
yeah, that is ridiculously common, man. OSHA safety, like.
Yeah,
Shout
I'm
out
gonna
my
argue
workplace
that this
workers.
line, I don't think they have major implications, but they are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think I discredited in like hypothetical thought how many Pokemon are just like kind of there. Like the Ponytail line, awesome, but
But like kind
at
of
this point,
inconsequential.
yeah, don't really mean much.
Well, because Ponytail's not like the only horse though either, right? Like
No,
no, yeah.
not overall. The Slowbro line is kind of the same. The Magnemite line, these have major implications because they are like they're fucking magnets. Like God, I didn't realize how many of the forms this tier list was going to put. Farfetch'd, I can't remember Farfetch'd doing anything crazy, so we're gonna throw that one into just like good atmosphere. Doduo and Dodrio, I believe, are an endangered species,
Huh.
which is interesting. But
I mean, they're based off of the dodo bird, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
Seal and Dugong definitely cool, but I don't think have anything crazy. Grimer and Muck, these are actually like part of the Pokemon Ranger game
Mm-hmm.
is that you have to like deal with these in the sewers.
Yeah, 'cause that's where they come from. Is like they come from like the human waste
Yeah,
that like gains sentience.
which is that's got a whole bunch of shit going on to it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to like size this so I can reasonably fit it, but Cloyster, does Cloyster have anything interesting that we need? I do think that it has like canonically pearls that will make you rich, but I would also like before I knew what a vagina looked like, I thought Cloyster was fucking awesome, and so I want to bump it up just for that. It will affect the size and sharpness of the spikes on its pearl-like face. It has aside from its face and its internal anatomy. It's impossible to open its shell from the outside. So there's cool stuff going on with Cloyster, but nothing like crazy. We have the Gengar line.
Mm.
Those are ghosts.
Yeah.
Like this is if Alakazam, right, is interesting because of its ability to like do mind control and shit,
Yeah.
Gengar eats dreams.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing
The
that he
fuck.
does. So like there's the yeah, you got to worry about that.
Imagine like having to hire an exterminator, cause like
To fix your dreams.
yeah.
Yeah. Onyx I'm arguing is like up there with Geodude for just like interesting,
Yeah.
you know, like nothing.
Like Onyx and Steelix, yeah,
Yeah.
like again,
Hypno,
gotta be a bunch of like mining accidents
yeah.
attributed to fucking.
Hypno's got to go up there with Gengar for like there's a storyline in the games where it's just kind of implied that he kidnaps little girls, which is fucked up. Krabby and Kingler at this point are good milieu. Surprised that none of these have come across as just like straight up bad ideas. I say right before I throw Electrode and Voltorb into them.
Mm. Now you gotta think like how do we power electricity?
Mm.
You know what I mean?
My real problem with them is you have to do some real fucking like Silver Age comic book bullshit
Yeah.
to explain why they look like Pokeballs
Yeah, exactly.
and vice versa. And also, like in game, the idea of a Pokemon that looks like a Pokeball, which is how we're representing items being left around the world, kind of cool. If you're taking the world building seriously, the idea that Pokeballs, which are like a valuable item, like they're not expensive, but they're a valuable item that are usually full of animal life,
Yeah.
are being left around with just like an ether.
Yeah, and it's just like
You
that
know?
thing is enchanted and there's like
Yeah. It's too
not
much to
enchanted.
that.
I'm tired. But like yeah, like Pokeballs are insanely.
Let's see if Execute has anything cool going on. Or Executor.
You gotta think it goes from a bundle of eggs
Yeah.
to a coconut tree.
Its body and legs are light brown. It can be sluggish during cloudy days due to the lack of sunlight. They are able to communicate telepathically. Oh, fuck. They can talk telepathically with humans, which
What the
is.
fuck?
Yeah, that's got to put them up there with Meowth for like a thing to consider. Cubone and Marowak have some of the best storytelling atmosphere to them, but actually are kind of a bad world building idea because Cubone has to wear its mother's skull.
Oh yeah.
Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, bad ideas. Those are fucking human beings again.
Yeah,
like
like-
those are. Poliwhirl, I like think gets by a little bit, but that's fucked up. Lickitung has some interesting stuff going on, but isn't crazy. Coughing, we're gonna put up with Grimer and Muck for like, if you're doing like the Ghibli Pokemon,
Yeah.
the idea of like the Pokemon that is created by
Human waste
yeah, like it's a really interesting
and
idea.
pollution. Yeah.
Rhyhorn, good atmosphere, but just as a Pokemon that was thought of like to be the original one, it really shows. It's just like Rocky Rhino. Chansey, or is that Blissey? I never remember. Regardless, healer Pokemon that's got some interesting shit going on.
Yeah, and Chansey's mainly work as like assistants to Nurse Joy, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Kangaskhan has the opposite Marowak problem. Like the idea of the kangaroo Pokemon walking around with the Joey in its pouch is really cool. Tangela, I think you can kind of take or leave. A lot of grass Pokemon, like the concept of grass Pokemon in general has stuff to it, but they aren't really necessary. To like any given Pokemon isn't interesting, but the concept of plants that are monsters is. Seadra's, I think, just like good milieu. Same thing with Jesus Christ, Goldeen and Sea King. Staryu, definitely cool. I don't know that it has crazy shit to worry about. Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime has major implications because it's fucking creepy and weird.
Again, also like sentient Pokemon,
Yep.
like very clearly.
Jinx, I think we can all agree, bad idea.
Yeah.
Bad idea. Scyther is good atmosphere. Electabuzz and Magmar I like as like actually Pinsir can go up there too. And Tauros can go into Milieu. Tauros is like really boring.
Tauros is just
actually I want to bump that up only because it's a Gen 1 Pokemon. Tauros gets like fucking Ice Beam and shit.
Imagine like bull riding.
Yeah. But the rest of them are all just kind of like they're like these archetypal Pokemon,
Yeah.
right? Where it's like, okay, that's our best example of an electric type, but it doesn't in itself have anything going on. Magikarp, definitely interesting, right? Like this idea of a kind of chaotic wilderness where this useful, helpless thing can become a terrible sea monster.
Yeah.
Interesting. Lapras, same deal. Lapras has its whole like extinction backstory. The idea that there's only like a handful of them left in the world.
Yeah.
And they're being rescued over time is interesting.
Hmm.
Ditto, probably important.
Yeah, very.
Ditto is where we have to just.
That's gonna have like big, like you got to think back to like the Detective Pikachu film.
Yeah.
And then like, like how Ditto played a literal major part.
Mm. No, Ditto is fucking crazy as a concept. It's also important to the Mew storyline, which is like the story of Gen 1.
Yeah.
We can bump Porygon immediately into major implications for that reason.
Yeah, because it's like
because it's fucking computer polygons become
Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eevee, we're gonna throw the whole Eevee line into important because Eevee is exemplary of the concept of evolution and typing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Omastar, Kabuto, Kabutops, Omanite, these all have major implications, but we're going to kind of lump them together. Aerodactyl for the same reason, actually. They'll have the major implication of like the forgotten past.
Yeah.
Which
like
is
fossils that become Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like
you need that for most storytelling, but it's like what those Pokemon again aren't particularly relevant to that in totality, other than they have implications about what that past was like.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they make a crazy interesting past. Snorlax, I think, is interesting. It's definitely a thing you can like build stories around. But it's not crazy. There's nothing insane going on. The legendary bird trio, I think we have to throw all in together. And the thing is about them, they are again like archetypal of elements as a concept.
Mm-hmm.
None of them actually really have lore surrounding them that's like crazy world bending. Like
yeah, it's like I don't think like Moltres or like Zapdos like cause.
Yeah, they're not warping
causing
anything.
Like natural disasters or anything.
They're like the way that we would think of like Sumeria.
Yeah.
Or Sumer, right? Like where it's like they're definitely important to things, but it's not something that I think you have any real connection to. Dragonite, I probably have to look at the lore for a little bit. It definitely gets its uses. It's another Pokemon that can communicate with humans, which is pretty swag. And it's our only dragon type in this run. It's capable of flying faster than the speed of sound. It's capable of affecting the weather. Yeah, so it's got a whole bunch of stuff going on. It's like the demigod Pokemon. But I don't know that it has. Again, it's not a thing like. It's not the first thing that we have to cross off on the design doc.
Yeah.
Not in the way that these little buddies are. So Mew and Mewtwo, when it comes to Kanto Pokemon, these are like
Put them into like
you have to explain why they exist,
yeah.
and they become such a big part of the story of like the existence of pocket monsters, right? Like Mew is meant to be the his story, right? Is his DNA contains the variant for the DNA of all other Pokemon,
Yeah.
and that has near infinite world building potential, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then Mewtwo as the attempt to recreate that by humanity, that is a central tension that like I don't know was crazy important to the video games at any point. I don't know
You know what that reminds me of?
what.
You know, like the big conceit of like Jurassic Park. Like one of the big like things about Jurassic Park is like just the human folly
Yeah.
of like attempting
Yeah.
of like
Yeah,
assuming that you could control like dinosaur DNA.
That's the thing. Is
Yeah.
it creates a Jurassic Park story out of Kanto.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Like that's the whole. It's a thing that like I think one drugged out Pokemon writer understood,
yeah.
right? And like knew to make Pokemon the movie about,
Yeah.
and they've never really followed up
Try
on
to touch on it.
afterward.
It's like also weird considering like how the legendaries work now where it's like Arceus is the god of all Pokemon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's where I think we could do follow-ups on this,
Yeah.
and it's why I think like the concept to me of tackling this like biblically proportioned fucking like world building. The thing is it's pretty obvious that only really one guy like took the narrative world building of Pokemon seriously,
yeah.
and that guy got booted pretty early.
Yeah, for sure.
He stuck around long enough to make Lugia and then is gone.
Yeah.
And then like you can see people at Game Freak trying to do something,
Mhm.
but they're
Like
not.
with what, like Legends Arceus or like
Yeah, like Legends Arceus, and just the way that these games have been handled for a long time. Like Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald introduces all of these ideas that are like thematically really strong,
yeah.
but never pulls any of them through to like really consider like, okay, we have the god of ground and the god of land, or the god of water, like,
Yeah.
and they've been at war forever, and like what does that mean?
Yeah. But like Pokemon, I think partially because it's sort of a children's property, can't like take the time to consider like what are like the humanitarian implications of
Yeah, it's also just not the way that the game is built.
Yeah.
But part of my like goal with this theoretical project is the idea that like you don't have very many ideas in the Pokemon world building that are like entirely discordant, right? Like they all make sense.
Yeah.
But you have to find a way to like fit all of the pieces together cohesively. And one of the ways to do that is with a decent origin story.
Yeah.
And like the interaction between Mew and Arceus is definitely a big part of that. But more so, you always have to be a level deeper in the iceberg than what you're showing.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Pokemon is that. Right? Like the world building all feels very surface level, and if you look underneath it,
it kind of
begins
to fall apart.
It's why it's so rich for game theory videos, other than the fact that it's a incredibly popular franchise.
Yeah.
Is like all of this stuff is kind of laying with a whole lot of blank to be filled in.
Yeah, like under it.
It's like you need to be filling in these blanks with something kind of legitimate.
Yeah.
And I think because it's a children's property, or it sees itself as one, like it's not that it can't concern itself with these things, it's that it doesn't have to. And so it doesn't. But like adult quotation marks storytelling works a little bit harder to convince the viewer that something is real. And so now I'm hitting the point as a 25-year-old where I'm like, I want reality in this, right? I
Yeah.
want that convincing.
Yeah.
And I really don't think it would be terribly hard
Hard
to
to like.
pull all of this together.
Yeah.
The other thing that you have to think about is the fact that like Pokemon is actually just kind of Shintoistic,
Oh, it definitely is.
right?
Like the idea that like the Shinto belief that like objects in the real world, like in like the physical space and world, like have souls, and like
Yeah.
if you leave an object alone for long enough, it'll just develop sentience. Like that directly ties into like things like muck
Yeah.
or like coughing, where it's like all these neglected parts of like nature.
So then you just have to question from like a scientific perspective why these things would happen, or at least
Yeah.
from like a narratively satisfying one.
Yeah.
I think that they also get away with this a lot more in Japan, where it's just like I can believe in these stories as an adult, as a person who like agrees at least somewhat with that spirituality, right? And the
Yeah.
idea that all of these things exist. It's more a part of the problem to tackle is the idea that like if these things are very present and interactable, the world is going to be deeply affected by that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And Pokemon creates this utopic world where like people do live in harmony with these ideas. There's a whole bunch of other ideas in the Kanto games and stories that like you would have to pull in, right? Like Lieutenant Surge. First of
Mhm.
all, early games is listed as the Lightning American, which off jump tells us there is a place in this world called America,
America. Yeah.
right? Which we don't necessarily have to extrapolate is the United States of America,
Yeah.
but it at least like implies that there was a person named Amerigo who found a continent,
Yeah.
right? And then you have to think about these things as like the problem with Pokemon world building in every bit of Pokemon media I've consumed, which is not all of it, but is a decent chunk, is they don't really consider like how different is a world where Gengar has always existed,
Yeah.
right? Or how different is a world even where Beedrill has always existed?
Yeah.
You know, each of these Pokemon, a project that I considered doing was designing, like making a D&D monster to coincide with every Pokemon, right? Not necessarily one to one the Pokemon, but just taking the same core concept.
Except, yeah.
Some of these, I'm not gonna lie, are trash. Like,
Oh, for sure. Like,
Dugong, like it's like oh, it's a seal with ice powers. It's like that's
like
it's
that
not
makes sense. It makes sense as like
as a Pokemon,
if we wanted to transfer a seal and make it a Pokemon. Like,
right? But it's not a resonant concept outside of that context.
yeah.
But something that you have to consider with just all of these things is like, okay, if Caterpie is the default caterpillar, like, what do they eat?
Yeah. And like, are there other species of caterpillar that turn into butterflies?
Who
Like,
lives near them?
yeah.
Even Legends Arceus doesn't really delve into the idea of like a society that early on probably shouldn't be super down to
Yeah.
like live with Pokemon,
Yeah.
right?
Because like them shits are dangerous.
Yeah,
Like Gengar is obviously like a demon. Like,
but like Firo, like
Yeah.
even Firo, it just tries to eat Ash and Misty,
yeah.
right? Like some of these things, and it's you know it's the nature problem of like none of them are really moralistically. You have to answer the question like, is Gengar doing what it's doing knowingly?
yeah. Right. Like,
Right? Like, is it?
how sentient is, and like we got to think about like these these Pokemon are very obviously on like varying levels of sentience. You know what I mean? So it's like, can we really judge like a Mr. Mime or a Kadabra next to like a Gengar or a Coughing?
Yeah. So it's within each of these Pokemon, and I don't know offhand how many evolutionary lines this is, and I'm not about to count them, right? But like each of these Pokemon has in itself a whole bunch of storytelling potential.
Yeah.
And then to take them all and to make them interconnected is insane. It's an insane concept, right? But it's like a project that I think would be worth. If I was a game director
Mm-hmm.
at Game Freak right now, the game that I'm pitching a bunch is just like, okay, we're gonna fresh slate this the way they did with Black and White,
Mm.
right? Which I don't know a lot of the lore of, but does actually seem more thought out than the earlier games, right?
Yeah.
But Black and White, there aren't earlier Pokemon, right? Like that region is its own Pokédex,
Interesting.
right? And it's like we can pull all of these pre-existing characters in. To me, I think as a somewhat business-minded person,
Mm-hmm.
the concept of doing a Pokemon game where you can't catch a Pikachu is fucking wild.
Yeah.
I think every Pokemon
Just in
game has to
terms of
sit down
pure
and
marketing,
start
Yeah.
with, okay, where do you catch Pikachu and where do you catch Eevee,
Yeah.
right? Um, but like, okay, we're gonna take all of these things and we're going to try to make sense of them all, you know. And if you were to do more adult games, which it's surprising to me that Game Freak is focused on like you should just have a split IP at this point,
Mm.
right? You can do the Pokemon games that are for kids, but you have a fucking insane audience
Yeah, an insane
of
hardcore
adult
audience.
people who keep playing your kid's game
Yeah.
and like being pissed off that it's not a game for adults, right? And I think Legends Arceus was kind of a step for like in that way where it was like, no, like here's one that's a little bit more,
Serious.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, we're gonna take this and we're gonna make something really fucking like really thought out and do the work to immerse you in a world that is real
Yeah.
and not the children's world of bright colors and fun sounds.
Yeah.
I think we're at the point where like people fall off of Pokemon a lot earlier than they did when I was a kid
Mm-hmm.
because you have so much media selection now
Yeah.
that it's like just putting these things in front of somebody's face and going, "Hey, look how cute this is," isn't enough anymore.
Yeah.
Um, even the idea of like, I mapped this out a little bit on my own, like over the winter, but just like the gym challenge. What is the gym challenge? Why is it important to people? Why would a kid want to undertake it? It's functional for a 10-year-old to go like, oh yeah, you want to do this because you want to be the coolest
Mm-hmm.
and you want to be the best, but you have to start to question like, okay, well, like, is there like compensation for it? Like,
Like, do I get money out of like winning these tournaments? Or
yeah,
do I just
like,
get a
what do
coolback?
you?
Like, what's the point?
Not
How
even.
do I fund like
You
traveling
don't have
the
to be
world?
doing it to get rich. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, and then that's the other thing is like, the Kanto region in Pokemon consists of like 5 or 6 cities and
The
a
fuck?
handful of towns, right? And it's like, how big is that?
Yeah. Right. It's like the size of New York. Like.
How big is Route 1 really,
Yeah.
right? And like, what does it mean to win? You know, I liked Sword and Shield for being the first games, to my knowledge, where the gym challenge itself is explicitly televised,
Yeah.
right? Because that lets you know, like, this is a professional sport. And I thought that was a really good world building step. Why can, imagine if you could walk downtown, right? And like you and 10 of your friends could play pickup football against the Buffalo Bills. Couldn't happen,
Hmm.
right? Like you would. So there's just so much of this. I would love to do, maybe that's a project we should do instead, is just like, what does an American Pokemon region look like,
Yeah.
right? because I think that gives you an in to being a lot more explicit about like recruiting.
Yeah, and like how the world like
Yeah.
operates outside of just like capturing Pokemon.
Yeah. There's just a whole lot to it. Anyway, that's a just a quick thrown together list of how I would rank Pokemon as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
Like and subscribe.
Please.